It's KJ. Welcome back to the UX Fridays series around the factors of user experience. Thinking about factors, there are actually many important factors and attributes that incorporate and make up the entire user experience. One of the most important factors, it's going to be a common theme throughout UX Fridays, is usability. So for part 2, we're going to dive into Usability 101. First, if there's been enough confusion around what is the difference between UX design versus UI design, if you've ever heard of these terms before, utility versus usability, there's probably a lot of confusion. Where do we even start with these terms? We're going to start with utility. When we think about the term functionality, and I know that term gets thrown around a lot, that is actually describing and directly relates to utility. Utility is a factor that refers to that design's functionality, but more importantly, it's whether it provides the design, the system, and the features a user actually needs. It's not only how it works. Yes, utility is directly related to functionality, but functionality is not only how it works or how a system works. It's making sure that the system or the design actually provides the features users need. If utility is talking about providing the features that they need, usability is the factor that assesses how easy or pleasant those features are actually to use. A very common assessment is to analyze how easy is the user interface to use. A lot of this content presenting to you today in UX Fridays is really inspired by a lot of the work from this group called Nielsen-Norman Group. They are a global innovator, user experience and research firm that have been around for a few decades. They're experts in this. What I'm going to do is provide some external documentation for anyone who is curious and wanting to learn more. The good news is a lot of what they put out in their documentation, I'm going to provide for you here in UX Fridays. This session about Usability 101 is based on the information from Nielsen-Norman Group and Don Norman as the father of UX. Bringing it back to usability, utility is a part of that. They are different, but if usability is this overarching, really important factor, these other factors and attributes overlap and encompass usability and just make it more conceptualized. Because when you think about usability, it's like, what does that even mean? But let's start to break it down. Utility, does it do what a user needs? Does this system or the design actually provide those needed features? Another important attribute is learnability. For those users who are visiting this system for the first time, how easy is it for users to accomplish their tasks that they need to do? Then efficiency, that is the next step. Once a user actually learns how to use and interact with the system, how quickly can they actually perform the tasks that they came there to do? So then there's memorability. Let's say there is a system or a product that a user doesn't always use, or they use quite infrequently, or maybe it's been quite a long period of time since they've revisited. So memorability deals with how easily is it for a user to reestablish and almost relearn and remember the system and be up to proficiency. Errors is another key attribute. Thinking about errors as the whole part of the usability of the system. How many errors? What is the severity of the errors? Can a user recover from these errors? And then lastly, satisfaction. How pleasant or easy is it to use the design or interact with it? If that can help conceptualize a little bit more about usability, bring it to more real life. How does this actually look when we're designing for it? Utility and usability. I said it was versus, well, it's actually kind of overlapping. They are different factors, but they overlap. When you have utility, so your system has the features that a user needs and it works, mixed with usability, how easy is it to interact and use those features, then you actually create usefulness of your product or your system. Usefulness, it is that formula, but it really doesn't matter if something is easy, if it's not something that you want or something that a user wants. It was hard to kind of conceptualize something tangible to talk about in this lesson, but I'm sure you can relate to some sort of experience with realizing that it's not something you actually want and it's not actually solving your problems. Even more so, usefulness deals with if the system can do what you want, but you can't accomplish that task because the user interface is difficult to use, that's not useful either. So I was trying to think of an example, and if you know me, I actually really love chickpeas. I have definitely a large stack of garbanzo beans or chickpeas, thinking about, I want to eat this, or I want to eat the chickpeas. To eat them, I have to open this can. That's a task I want to accomplish. So I have a can opener. And that is a tool that is useful because it has a purpose. It does serve its purpose. It can do what I want as a tool. but it is so difficult to use that is so frustrating. I feel like it takes me 3 times as long to even accomplish this task. Something to note, maybe it's the design of this specific can opener, or maybe it's the design of can openers in general. And I know there has been some innovation, and maybe this is just telling me that I need to upgrade. But the fact that it takes me so long to interact and use the interface, that is not useful either. Why usability? Usability is necessary for survival. Think about the last time that you went to a website and you were trying to find a piece of content or information. Within a short period of time, you couldn't find it. Whether it was extremely frustrating or minorly frustrating, what did you do? Well, I can guess that you probably left. So think about it in the terms of a homepage. You visit a website, a homepage for a company, and you can't tell what they do or what kind of offer or service they're going to provide. You're probably going to leave. If you ever get lost in a website, you're probably going to leave. The list goes on. The pattern here is that a user will leave if it's difficult and if it's not usable. Ensuring the usability is crucial for survival because a user will just go somewhere else. There's so much different products and services out there. We're not living in an age where there's a lack of information or a website. A user will find the content that they're looking for. So for a user, leaving is actually that first line of defense when they're going to encounter a difficulty. The user experience, and thus one of the most important factors, usability, is actually critical to the success or failure of a product in the market. What I wanted to wrap up today with this part 2 is usability, because it's so important, like how do we measure that? If you think about measuring, you can think of data and analytics. I am a huge fan of data and analytics. Like we cannot have research, we cannot have quantitative observations and insights if we don't have data. I am a #1 fan, and I will never say that we can't have that or it should go away. But if you're analyzing analytics at the end of a process and you find one piece of data that a user is spending 4 minutes on this page, the data doesn't show why. Well, if we take this mentality and think about this factor of usability very early on in the process and we're very intentional about it, a way to do that is actually usability testing. Being aware and intentional of that factor of usability within the whole user experience. What you can look forward to in future episodes of UX Fridays, we are going to dive deep into usability testing because a common theme is usability. You can stay tuned for another episode for part 3 as we analyze a few more factors of the user experience. Thank you.